Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter Human Reproduction. So this is the part 2 of the lecture. Before starting this lecture, I just want to give you one information that the images, text and other materials used in the presentations are for education purposes only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners. If you are the owner and have any concerns or issues, please contact us at sathee@itk.ac.in and we shall remove the content immediately. Please note that parts of the content may have been generated using generative AI, which is experimental. So, what are the objectives of today's lecture? So, what we will study, what we will understand in this lecture today. So, we'll talk about the female reproductive system. We will talk about the various parts of the female reproductive system. We'll talk about the functions of the various parts which comprise the female reproductive system. Okay. So we'll enlist the names. I'll explain you the function of the different parts of the female reproductive system. Then, with the help of a neat labeled diagram of the female reproductive system, again, we will understand the various parts of the female reproductive system. We'll also talk about the duct system of the human female. Okay, like the male reproductive system, which consists of primary sex organs, accessory ducts, and accessory glands. Female reproductive system also consists of primary sex organs. Then they have this duct system known as accessory ducts and external genitalia as well, which is also present in the male reproductive system. Okay, so we will talk about the female reproductive system, and then in the end, we will summarize this entire lecture. And after discussing the theory, we will also discuss the DPP related to this female reproductive system topic. Now, let's begin with this lecture. The female reproductive system consists of pair of ovaries. Like the male reproductive system, it consists of pair of testes. The female reproductive system consists of pair of ovaries. So ovaries, they are the primary sex organs in females. Now, what is the function of a primary sex organ? The functions are, first of all, first function is the production of the gametes. Okay. And second function is the production of the hormones. So the ovaries, within the ovaries, the eggs are synthesized, eggs are produced, or you can say ovum is produced by the process known as oogenesis. And then hormones are also synthesized. Okay. These are known as ovarian hormones. Okay, because they are released and they are secreted by the ovaries. They are also known as steroid hormones because they are made up of steroid. So what are the name of the ovarian hormones which are steroid hormones? So these are progesterone and estrogen. Yeah. These hormones, they are involved in the, you can say, production of the secondary sexual characteristic. What are the secondary sexual characteristic in females? So this is the breast development. So breast development is, you can say, the first secondary sexual characteristic. Then onset of the menstrual cycle. This is also secondary sexual characteristic. Okay. Now, so a pair of ovaries is present, means two ovaries are present, along with a pair of oviducts. Oviducts, it is also known as the fallopian tube. Okay. Then uterus is present, cervix is present, vagina, and external genitalia is also present, which is located in the pelvis region. So the female reproductive system consists of all these parts: ovaries, oviducts, uterus, okay, then cervix, vagina, and external genitalia. And all of these parts or the female reproductive system, they are located in the pelvic region. Now, these part of the system, along with a pair of the mammary gland. The mammary gland, they're also known as breast. So there is a pair of a mammary gland. They are integrated structurally and functionally to support the processes of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth, and the child care. Okay, so mammary gland, they are associated with the female reproductive system. So mammary gland, they are not directly involved in the reproduction, but they are involved in the child care. Because this mammary gland, they produce milk. And this milk is very important for the newborn. This mother's milk, this is known as colostrum. So it is a thick yellow color fluid. Okay. And this is very nutritious. And it also consists of antibodies such as IgA, immunoglobulin A. So antibodies, they are immunoglobulins. Okay, so IgA is present in mother's milk, known as colostrum. So it provides nutrition and also provides immunity to the newborn. So the parts of the female reproductive system, along with the mammary gland, they are involved in the process of ovulation, means release of the egg. Okay. Then fertilization. Fertilization means fusion of the male and the female gamete. Okay. Then pregnancy. And then birth. And then the child care. Okay. Now, ovaries, they are the primary female sex organs that produce female gametes, known as the ovum, and several steroid hormones, or you can say ovarian hormones. Ovarian hormones, hormones which are released by the ovaries, such as estrogen and progesterone. So here you can see in this figure, this is a diagrammatic sectional view of female pelvis showing the reproductive system. So here you can see different part of the female reproductive system. You can see uterus here. Okay. Then you can see clitoris, labia minora, labia majora. Vaginal orifice, you can see vagina, you can see here. So these are all the parts of the female reproductive system, and we will discuss the function of these parts. Okay, we'll talk about all of these parts. We will understand, okay, about all of these parts of the female reproductive system. Then you can see here urinary bladder is seen, which is a part of the excretory system. Okay. Then you can see here cervix. This is also part of the female reproductive system. And rectum and anus, they are part of the digestive system. So you can see female reproductive system, this is located in the pelvis region. Now the ovaries, where are ovaries located? So there are two ovaries. Ovaries are located one on each side of the lower abdomen. Okay. So we'll talk about the morphology and anatomy of the ovaries now. Okay, and briefly we will discuss. Okay, the external features and the internal. So ovary is about 2 to 4 centimeter in length and is connected to the pelvic wall and uterus by the ligaments. So how is ovaries connected to pelvic wall and uterus? It is connected by the ligaments. So these ligaments, they help the ovaries to be in a particular place. Okay. So with the help of these ligaments, the ovaries is present in a particular place. Each ovary is covered by a thin epithelium which encloses the ovarian stroma. Okay, so within the ovary, ovarian stroma is present. Within this ovarian stroma, blood capillaries are present. Okay, so you can see here, this is a diagrammatical sectional view of the female reproductive system. So there is a pair of ovaries, and ovaries, you can see they are 2 to 4 centimeter in length. Okay. Clear? They are connected to the pelvic or uterus by the ligament. So this is the uterus. So they are connected to the uterus as well as to the pelvic wall by the ligaments. Okay. Then you can see here the different parts of the female reproductive system. There are 2 ovaries. Okay, you can see here the vagina, cervical canal, cervix, then fallopian tube, also known as the oviduct. Okay. Now, uterus has 3 walls: perimetrium, myometrium, endometrium. We'll talk about these also. Okay. So remember, this is uterus. The lower part of the uterus, this is known as the cervix. Then you can see there is a cervical canal, and cervix is connected to the vagina through the cervical canal, or you can say uterus is connected to the vagina through the cervix and the cervical canal. Clear? Then from the ovaries, you can see from each ovaries, one oviduct, you can say, arises. So there are 2 ovaries, means 2 oviduct or 2 fallopian tubes. Okay. So if we talk about fallopian tube, there are 3 parts of the fallopian tube: infundibulum, ampulla, and isthmus. There are certain finger-like projections on the infundibulum known as fimbriae. So we'll talk about all of this now. Okay, we will understand the functions. We'll understand the parts of the female reproductive system now. So we're talking about the ovarian stroma. This ovarian stroma is further divided into 2 zones: the peripheral cortex and the inner medulla. So the peripheral region is always cortex and the inner region is always medulla. You have to remember this. If you cut a section of any internal organ also, like kidney, the peripheral region is also always known as cortex, and the inner region is always known as the medulla. Now the oviducts, also known as the fallopian tube, the uterus, and the vagina, this constitute the female accessory ducts. Like males also have accessory ducts, females also have accessory ducts. So what were the accessory ducts present in males? So these were rete testes. Okay, then vas efferentia, then epididymis. Okay, then vas deferens. These were the accessory ducts in the males. What was the function of accessory ducts in the males? It was storage, maturation, and transport of the sperms. Similarly, in case of females, okay, oviducts, uterus, and vagina, this constitute the female accessory ducts. So again, the role here is same. Okay, the transport of the female gamete. Clear? So there are 2 fallopian tubes, one arising from each ovary. Now you can see again, now you can understand this. This is the fallopian tube. There are 2 fallopian tubes, one from each ovary. Okay, then this is the uterus. This is the uterine cavity. Then you can see the vagina here. Okay, so uterus is connected to vagina through the cervix and the cervical canal. Now, each fallopian tube is about 10 to 12 centimeter long and extend from the periphery of each ovary to the uterus. Okay. So we are talking about the fallopian tube now, also known as the oviduct. So length is 10 to 12 centimeter in long and extends from the periphery of the ovary towards the uterus. Now the part closer to the ovary is the funnel shaped known as infundibulum. So fallopian tube has 3 parts. One of the part is known as infundibulum. So what is infundibulum? The part near to the ovaries, which is funnel shaped. This is known as infundibulum. Now, the edges of the infundibulum possesses finger-like projections called fimbriae, which help in collection of the ovum after the ovulation. So this infundibulum have some finger-like projections. These finger-like projections, they are called fimbriae. Okay, and this fimbriae helps in the collection of the ovum, which is released after the ovulation. So what is the ovulation? Release of the egg. So eggs, they are produced, or the ovum, they are produced in the ovaries. And then these ovaries, they release this egg. Clear? This egg is captured by the infimbriae, which is part of the infundibulum of the fallopian tube. Now, infundibulum leads to a wider part of oviduct called the ampulla. So after infundibulum, or infundibulum leads to ampulla. Okay. So it is a wider part of the oviduct. Now, what is unique about ampulla, or what you should remember about ampulla? In ampulla, the fertilization occurs, means the fusion of the male and female gamete occurs. So you can say ampulla, this is the site for the fertilization, site of fertilization, where male and female gametes meet and they fuse with each other. So the egg also reach the ampullary region, and sperm will also reach the ampullary region. Okay, and it is very important that both the gametes, male and the female gametes, the sperm and the egg, should be present at the same time in the ampulla. Then only fertilization will occur. That's why not all coitus leads to pregnancy. Remember this. The question can come from here. Do all coitus lead to sexual, you can say, pregnancy? Okay. So not all coitus lead to pregnancy because, okay, the egg and the ovum, they must be present simultaneously in the same region, in the ampullary region, for fertilization to occur. If only sperm is present or if only egg is present, then there will be no fertilization, there will be no formation of zygote and the embryo. Okay. Clear? So the females can track their menstrual cycle and they can avoid pregnancy by tracking their menstrual cycle. So they can track when the ovulation will occur. Okay. And they can have coitus, they can have sexual intercourse. Okay. You can say before the ovulation. Clear? So we were reading that infundibulum leads to a wider part of oviduct known as ampulla. So here you can see these are the parts of the fallopian tube. This is infundibulum, which is funnel shaped, and this is the part nearest to the ovary. This infundibulum has finger-like projections known as the fimbriae. This fimbriae helps in the collection of the egg or the ovum, which is released by the ovary. Then infundibulum leads to ampulla. Ampulla, okay, it is a wide part. You can see it is a wide part, and ampulla is a site of fertilization. Okay, so these are the two parts. Next part is isthmus. So this isthmus, this has a narrow lumen and it connects to the uterus. Now the last part of the oviduct or the fallopian tube is known as isthmus, and this isthmus has a narrow lumen and it joins the uterus. The fallopian tube, you can say, leads to the uterus. So let's talk about the uterus. Now uterus is single and it is also called as womb. Okay, uterus is known as the womb. In the uterus, the fetal development occurs. When we'll talk about implantation, okay, now in implantation we will read that the blastocyst which is formed, it is implanted in the uterine wall. Okay, and then the growth of the fetus occurs. That's why uterus is known as the womb. the growth of the fetus occurs in the womb. Okay, let's talk about the shape of the uterus. The shape of the uterus is like an inverted pear. Again, uterus is supported by ligaments attached to the pelvic wall. The uterus opens into vagina through narrow cervix. So the lower part of the uterus, this is known as the cervix. And the uterus, it will open into vagina through this cervix. So again, question can come from here. Okay. The uterus opens into vagina through what? Again, you can see here, this is the uterus, the lower part of the uterus, this is known as the cervix. And the uterus, it opens into the vagina through a narrow cervix. The cavity of the cervix is called cervical canal, which along with vagina forms the birth canal. Okay, so what is the cavity of the cervix called? It is known as cervical canal. And cervical canal, along with the vagina, forms the birth canal. Again, question can come from here. The vagina is made up of what? Or it consists of which parts? Or birth canal consists of which parts? So the birth canal consists of the cervical canal as well as the vagina. Okay. The vagina has, you can say, so many roles. So through the vagina, the female undergoes sexual intercourse. Then through vagina, the delivery of the child takes place. Okay, delivery of the child or childbirth, this is known as parturition. So you should remember all the scientific terms. Okay, like fertilization. Okay, we'll talk about implantation also later in our lectures. Clear? And then parturition, which is childbirth. Lactation, which is the release of milk from the mammary gland. You should remember all these scientific terms. Okay, you should know about the birth canal. Okay, now you can see here how the sperms enter into the female genital tract during the process of insemination. So insemination is the transfer of sperms into female genital tract. The sperm will travel, they will enter into the vagina, then they will travel through the cervix, and then they will finally reach the fallopian tube. They will reach the ampullary region of the fallopian tube where the fertilization will occur if the egg is already present there. Now, the wall of the uterus has 3 layers of tissues. Let's talk about the wall of the uterus. So it has 3 layers of tissues. The outer one, okay, this is known as perimetrium and it is membranous. Then the middle one is made up of smooth muscle tissues and it is known as the myometrium, and the innermost is known as the endometrium. It is made up of glandular tissue. Okay. Clear? So we were talking about the parts of the fallopian tube, infundibulum, ampulla, and then last one is the isthmus. Isthmus leads to uterus or the uterine cavity. Now, how the sperms can travel to the ampullary region? Sperm will enter through here, through the vagina during the process of insemination. They will travel through cervix and then they will finally reach the ampullary region of the fallopian tube where fertilization will occur. So to block the entry of the sperms, what is done? Some pills are taken, some hormonal pills are taken, which causes the inflammation of the cervix. Okay, so there is no space for the sperms to travel because the cervix become inflamed. So this stop the sperm to reaching the ampullary region of the fallopian tube and it stops the process of fertilization and thus pregnancy. Now the external, we were talking about the walls of the uterus. Okay, the wall of the uterus has 3 layers. The external layer, which is quite thin and membranous, this is known as perimetrium. So you have to remember that perimetrium is thin and membranous. Question can come from here. That perimetrium, is it membranous? So yes, you will write it is membranous. Then the middle thick layer of smooth muscles, known as the myometrium. So the you can say the middle layer is known as myometrium, and it is made up of thick layer of smooth muscles. Smooth muscles, they are involuntary, and these muscles, they can generate contractions. Okay, and by this contraction, the fetus is expelled out of the body of the female. Here, so the middle thick layer is known as myometrium. It is made up of smooth muscles, and the inner granular layer called endometrium that lines the uterine cavity. So the endometrium, this is glandular layer. Okay, so you should remember perimetrium, it is membranous, myometrium, it is made up of smooth muscles, and inner endometrium, it is made up of glandular cells. Now the endometrium, okay, which is the innermost layer of the uterus cell wall. Endometrium undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle, while the myometrium exhibits strong contraction during delivery of the baby. So endometrium undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle. We'll talk about this also in our upcoming sessions. So menstrual cycle, it is a cyclic event. Okay. Ovulation takes place in the mid of the menstrual cycle, means at around 14 days, because menstrual cycle is around 28 days. Okay. Now what does it mean endometrium undergoes cyclic changes? So the thickness of the endometrium changes. Okay. So when the endometrium is quite thick, then there is no menstrual cycle. Okay. And when the endometrium is quite thin, then this you can say endometrium, this will break. This is known as shedding of the endometrium, and this will lead to menstruation, or you can say bleeding. Okay. So here endometrium is undergoing cycling changes, means its thickness is there is a variation in its thickness. Sometimes it's very thick, in some phase it is very thick, and in some phase it is very thin. So all of this depends on the level of the hormone progesterone, and to a little extent of estrogen also. This progesterone helps to maintain the endometrium. It helps to maintain the thickness of the endometrium. Okay. So as long as progesterone is present, the endometrium will remain thick. And when the level of progesterone decreases, the endometrium thickness also decreases, and it becomes so thin that it undergoes shedding. There is a shedding of the endometrium. Now this was about endometrium. Now myometrium. Myometrium is made up of smooth muscles. Because of the presence of smooth muscles, they exhibit strong contraction during delivery of the baby. Okay. Here you can see these are different parts of the wall of the uterus. So outermost layer, external layer, is known as perimetrium. It is quite thin and membranous. Then the middle one is known as myometrium, which is made up of smooth muscles. This exhibits contraction during the childbirth. This contraction is basically due to release of the hormone oxytocin. Okay. So myometrium being of smooth muscles, they can initiate contractions, and these contractions are further amplified by the hormone oxytocin. Then endometrium, this is the innermost layer. Okay. And this endometrium undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle. Means its thickness will vary depending on the level of the progesterone. Now the female external genitalia include mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. So these are the parts of the female external genitalia. There is a common name given to the female external genitalia, which includes pons, pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. And this name is vulva. Okay, so this is the common word which is given to the all the components of the external genitalia. Okay, now we'll talk about the external genitalia now, different parts of the external genitalia. Now, mons pubis is a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and the pubic hair. Now, after mons pubis, there is labia majora. So, labia majora are fleshy fold of tissues which extend down from the mons pubis and surround the vaginal opening. This is known as labia majora. Okay, this labia majora extend down from the mons pubis and it will surround the vaginal opening. Here again, you can see different part of the female reproductive system. Here they have shown you labium majora and labia minora. Clitoris they have shown you. Now labia minora is paired fold of skin under the labia majora. So labia majora was under the mons pubis and labia minora is paired fold of tissue under the labia majora. Now the opening of the vagina is often covered partially by a membrane called hymen. So the vaginal opening is surrounded by a partial membrane known as the hymen. The clitoris is a tiny finger-like structure which lies at the upper end of the two labia minora above the urethral opening. So what is clitoris? Clitoris is like finger-like projection. And it lies where? What is the location? It lies at the upper junction of the two labia minora above the urethral opening. Again, you can see here, this is the diagram of the female reproductive system. You can see here the cervix, the vagina, anus, labia majora, labia minora, and clitoris you can see here. Now the hymen is often torn during the first coitus, which is known as the intercourse. Coitus is also known as the sexual intercourse. But this is not true always, that hymen is torn during the first coitus. Hymen can be broken due to other region also. What are these reasons? So they can be sudden jolt or a sudden, you can say, if a person falls here, then due to cycling also, the hymen can break in case of females. Okay, clear. Now, however, it can also be broken by sudden fall or jolt, insertion of vaginal tampons. So vaginal tampons are used by the female during the menstrual cycle because there is, you can say, bleeding during the menstrual cycle. Now, due to active participation in some sports like horseback riding, cycling, etc. So because of all these, the hymen can break. Okay. In some women, the hymen persists even after the coitus. In fact, the presence or absence of hymen is not a reliable indicator of virginity or the sexual experience. So hymen can break down due to various reasons that we have listed here. Now, sometimes the hymen can persist also after the sexual intercourse. So we can say hymen, presence or absence of hymen is not a reliable indicator of virginity or the sexual experience. Okay, so again, we have discussed this female reproductive system here. Okay, we are talking about the external genitalia. Now let's talk about the mammary gland. A functional mammary gland is characteristic of all the female mammals. So where are mammary glands present? Mammary glands are present in all the female mammals. So a pair of mammary gland is present known as the breast. Now the mammary glands are paired structures known as breast that contain glandular tissue and variable amount of the fat. So mammary gland consists of what? Mammary gland consists of fat also, and they consist of the glandular tissue. So why they consist of the glandular tissues? The glandular tissue of each breast is divided into 1 to 15 mammary lobes containing cluster of cell called as the alveoli. Okay. So you should remember this. How many mammary lobes are present? So the glandular tissue of each breast is divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobes. And these mammary lobes consist of cluster of cells called as alveoli. So these alveoli, they are different from the alveoli of the lungs. So in the lungs, these alveoli help in the exchange of the gases. Here, these alveoli, they are involved in the secretion of the milk. Okay. So within this mammary lobes, cluster of cell known as alveoli are present. So you can see here, they have shown you in this diagram. This is a diagrammatical section view of the mammary gland. Okay. So here you can see the fat is present in the mammary gland. Then mammary lobes are present. 15 to 20 mammary lobes are present. Okay. Then you can see mammary alveolus here. These mammary lobes consist of cluster of cells known as the alveoli. Now, what is the function of alveoli? Cells of the alveoli secrete milk, which is stored in the cavities or lumens of the alveoli. So, alveoli is very important because it secretes milk, and this milk is stored in the cavities of the alveoli, means lumen of the alveoli. Now, alveoli open into mammary tubules now. The tubules of each lobe join to form a mammary duct. These mammary tubules of each lobe, they join to form a mammary duct. So you can see here, these were the fat tissue, then mammary lobe. Mammary lobe consists of cluster of cells known as alveoli. Okay. Cells of the alveoli secrete milk, which is stored, okay, stored in the cavities of the alveoli. Then you can see alveoli open into mammary tubules, and from the mammary tubules, so tubules of each lobe join to form the mammary duct here. This is the mammary duct. Clear? Now, several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla. So how is mammary ampulla formed? When several mammary ducts, they join together. Okay. So several mammary ducts join to form a wider mammary ampulla, which is connected to lactiferous duct, through which milk is sucked out. So finally, the milk is sucked out through the lactiferous gut, because milk will finally reach the lactiferous duct. Okay. So question can come from here also. From which part of the mammary gland the milk is sucked out? So answer will be lactiferous duct. Okay, then again question can come. The alveoli cells, the role of the alveoli cells. Do they secrete milk or something else? Clear? Then they can ask you, these mammary ducts, they join to form what? So they join to form wider mammary ampulla. Again, you can see the diagrammatical section view of mammary gland. Fat tissues are present, mammary lobes are present, alveoli is present, mammary duct is present. Okay, this is the ampulla region. These are lactiferous duct through which the milk is sucked out. Okay, and then you can see these are the nipples, and this is the areola. So you should remember all of these: mammary lobe, alveolus, mammary duct, ampulla, lactiferous duct. Now, female reproductive system. Okay, we have discussed the female reproductive system. Now let's summarize this entire lecture. Female reproductive system consists of a pair of ovaries, means 2 ovaries are present, a pair of oviducts. Oviducts are also known as the fallopian tube. So one oviduct coming from each ovary, then a uterus, vagina is present. Uterus is also known as the womb. Okay. Vagina along with the cervical canal forms the birth canal. Okay. Then external genitalia, which consists of mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, then clitoris, cervix. These are all external genitalia. Okay. Where is clitoris present? Clitoris is present at the junction of the labia minora. Okay, it is present at the junction of the 2 labia minora. Then there is a pair of mammary glands also, which is involved in the child care. Okay, so mammary glands, they are not directly involved in reproduction, but they are involved in the child care. Now, the ovaries produce the female gamete known as the ovum, and some steroid hormone also known as ovarian hormones, such as progesterone and estrogen. Now, ovarian follicles in different stages of development are embedded in the stroma. So the ovarian stroma consists of what? So ovarian stroma consists of ovarian follicles in different stages of the development, or you can say they consist of different stages of ovarian follicle. So there is a primary stage, secondary stage, tertiary stage, and Graafian follicle. So we'll talk about this in our next sessions. Okay, so ovarian stroma consists of these blood vessels, and they also consist of the ovarian follicles in different stages of development. Then oviduct, uterus, and vagina, these are the female accessory ducts. So you have to remember this question can come from here. Okay. A uterus has 3 layers. The external is known as perimetrium, which is membranous. The middle one is known as myometrium, which is made up of smooth muscle cell. And then there is the endometrium, which is the innermost layer of the uterus. Endometrium undergoes cyclic changes during the menstrual cycle. It means its thickness varies. In the presence of the progesterone, the thickness, it has maximum thickness. When the progesterone level is maximum, then the thickness will be maximum. When the progesterone level is very less, okay, or when there is no progesterone, then what will happen? The endometrium will become very thin. It will break. This is known as shedding of the endometrium, which leads to menstruation or bleeding. Female external genitalia includes mons pubis, labia majora, labia minora, hymen, and clitoris. Okay. Now, hymen is the covering of the vagina, and the presence or absence of hymen is not the indicator of virginity of the female, because sometimes the hymen can persist after sexual intercourse, or the hymen can break due to sudden jolt or fall, or due to cycling, or due to doing any sport activity. Okay, clear? Then mons pubis, this is consists of fat and pubic hairs. Then below the mons pubis, labia majora is present. Then labia minora is present. Clitoris is present at the junction of the labia majora and labia minora. Okay, clear? Where the 2 labia minora meets, there the clitoris is present, means at the junction of the 2 labia minora. Now, mammary gland, they are one of the female secondary sexual characteristic. Okay, so mammary glands means breast, they are the female secondary sexual characteristic. So what happens during puberty? There is a lot of physiological and morphological changes. There is a release of hormones, and these hormones leads to the development of secondary sexual characteristic. The development of mammary gland is one of the secondary sexual characteristics in the females. Okay, so we have discussed the female reproductive system today. Okay, now we will discuss the DPP related to this topic, female reproductive system. So let's begin with this question. Which part of the female reproductive system responsible for the collection of the ovum after the ovulation? What will be the correct answer here? So they are asking about a part of the female reproductive system which is involved in the collection of the egg after the ovum, after the ovulation. What is ovulation? It is the release of the ovum, release of the egg from the ovaries. So these ovaries, they release the egg, and this egg is collected by the finger-like projections arising from the infundibulum, which is the part of the fallopian tube, one of the part of the fallopian tube. Other parts of the fallopian tube are ampulla and isthmus. So infundibulum leads to a wider part known as ampulla, which is the site of fertilization, and ampulla leads to a narrow, you can say, a part which is known as the isthmus. Isthmus has a narrow lumen. Isthmus leads to uterus. What are the options? Ampulla, isthmus, fimbriae, and cervix. What is the correct answer? Okay, here the correct answer should be option number C, fimbriae. Here, these are the finger-like projections, okay, which arise from the infundibulum. Now, the endometrium is the inner layer of the uterus. So there are 3 layers of the uterus wall. Innermost is endometrium, middle one is the myometrium, and then external is the perimetrium. Okay. Now, what type of tissue primarily constitute this layer? Means endometrium. Endometrium is made up of what? Smooth muscles, glandular, membranous, or fatty tissue. Okay, the answer here will be option number B, glandular. This is the right answer. So this endometrium, this consists of glandular tissues. So this glandular tissue secretes some fluid which helps in the, you can say, the process of implantation. It helps in the pregnancy. Okay, the perimetrium, which is the external layer, this is membranous. And the myometrium, this consists of smooth muscles. So smooth muscles, they are involuntary. And this myometrium, this you can say contract during the childbirth. And these contractions, they help in expelling the baby out of the body of the female through the vagina. Now, which structure connects the uterus to the external genitalia and serves as the birth canal during the delivery? What will be the correct answer here? So they are asking, there is a structure which is connecting the uterus to the external genitalia. Okay, the common term given to external genitalia is vulva. This vulva includes mons pubis, labia majora, minora, hymen, and clitoris. So which is a structure which connects uterus to the external genitalia, and it is a part of the birth canal during the delivery. So the birth canal consists of the vagina as well as the cervical canal. Okay, so keeping this in mind, you have to answer this question. Option number 1 is oviduct, B is cervix, C is vagina, and 4th is infundibulum. So what will be the correct answer here? So let's have a look at the answer here. Answer will be option number C, vagina. Okay, so you might get confused between option number B and C here. So option number B is cervix. Option number C is vagina. Obviously, the answer won't be oviduct and infundibulum. Oviduct is the fallopian tube and infundibulum is one of the part of the fallopian tube. Okay, so why answer is vagina here? Because if you look at the female reproductive system, then you have the uterus, then the lower part of the uterus, this is known as the cervix. Then you have the cervical canal, and then you have the vagina. And then you have the external genitalia. So vagina connects the uterus to the external genitalia. Okay, that's why the answer is not cervix, it is vagina. Now, what is the function of the myometrium in the uterine wall? Okay, so the myometrium, which is the thick middle layer, okay, of the uterine wall. What is the function of the myometrium? So it consists of smooth muscles. Okay, so keeping this in mind, you have to answer this question. First is secrete hormones. Second is lines the uterine cavity. Third is contracts during the childbirth. Fourth is protects the uterus externally. So what will be the correct answer? Okay, so let's have a look at the answer here. Answer is option number C, contracts during the childbirth. So myometrium consists of smooth muscles and it exhibits contractions, which is important for the expelling out of the body. So these contractions, this pushes the, you can say, the child out of the body of the female through the vagina. Okay. There is one hormone, oxytocin. These also, you can say, stimulate myometrium. This stimulates the contraction in the myometrium, which again leads to the childbirth. Now, next question, which part of the mammary gland structure is directly responsible for storing milk before it is released through the lactiferous duct? So milk is finally sucked out through the lactiferous duct. But where is the milk actually stored? Or which cells they produce milk? Okay. What are the options? A is alveoli, B is mammary ampulla, fourth is mammary tubules, and option number fourth is lactiferous duct. Okay. So finally, I have told you the milk reaches the lactiferous duct, and through the lactiferous duct, the milk is sucked out. So what will the correct answer here? Okay, here the correct answer will be alveoli. So alveoli, they are the cells which secrete milk, and this milk is stored in the ducts of the alveoli. Okay, alveoli, this secretes milk. So the question was asking that which part of the mammary gland is directly responsible for storing milk before it is released through the lactiferous duct. So what are these lactiferous ducts? So these lactiferous ducts, these are present within the female breast that, you can say, transport the milk from mammary glands to the nipples. So the newborn, it sucks the nipples. Okay. And the milk is already present in the lactiferous duct. Clear? Okay. So all our answers were correct. Okay. Alveoli was also correct. So we were talking about lactiferous duct. These lactiferous duct, okay, these are present just behind the nipples. And when the newborn, it sucks the nipples, it is sucking out the milk from the lactiferous ducts. And alveoli, these alveoli, they secrete the milk. And this milk is stored in the ducts or the lumen of the alveoli. Then it reaches the lactiferous duct, which are present in the nipples. And the newborn, it sucks the nipples. And when it sucks the nipples, it is sucking the milk, which is present in the lactiferous duct. Earlier, this milk was present in the ducts of the alveoli. That's why the correct answer is alveoli here. All right. So this is the end of this session. I hope this session was quite knowledgeable for you. Thank you very much for listening.